The first time my wife tried to steal my future, she did it with a smile so calm it almost made me doubt my own pulse. I was sitting in a private room on the 12th floor of St. Catherine's Medical Center, yellow hospital light washing over the walls, while a transplant coordinator explained that my living donor had completed every final clearance. Surgery was set for Monday. For days away. I remember staring at the date on the whiteboard and thinking it looked less like a number and more like a doorway. Monday meant I would live long enough to see winter. Monday meant I could stop measuring my life in lab results, swelling, and how many stairs I could climb before my vision went gray. Monday meant I might finally sleep without wondering whether my liver would fail before morning. My wife, Dr. Elena Vale, stood beside the window in navy scrubs, one hand tucked into the pocket of her white coat. To everyone else, she looked like the perfect surgeon spouse, composed, brilliant, protective. To me, she looked distracted. She had been checking her phone every few minutes, turning the screen away whenever I glanced over. I noticed. I told myself not to notice. Illness does strange things to pride. It teaches you to ignore small humiliations because you are already dependent on too many people. I needed her to drive me home. I needed her to understand the medication schedule. I needed her not to look at me like I was becoming a burden. The coordinator finished speaking and left us alone. I smiled at Elena. Monday, I said. She did not smile back. Instead, she crossed the room, closed the door, and sat in the chair beside my bed. Daniel, there's been a development. For words, quiet words, they hit harder than any alarm. I asked what kind of development. She folded her hands as though she were about to explain a complicated procedure to a nervous family. Your donor's latest imaging raised concerns about vascular anatomy. The team may need to postpone. May need to. We need more review. I searched her face. Elena had performed hundreds of liver resections. She could describe the branching of the hepatic artery from memory while half asleep. Yet she was giving me no details. No measurements. No names. No next step. That was when fear sharpened into suspicion. Who found the concern? I asked. Her eyes flicked toward the door. The transplant board. Which radiologist? Daniel, please don't interrogate me. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was cruel. Because it was defensive. Elena never minded questions when the truth favored her. I reached for the folder on the tray table. She moved faster and placed her hand over it. Rest, she said. I'll handle this. There are moments when a marriage ends long before anyone says the word divorce. Sometimes it ends with a confession. Sometimes with a hotel receipt. Mine ended with my wife's palm covering a medical file she did not want me to read. I let go of the folder. Not because I trusted her. Because I wanted her to believe I did. That night, Elena took a call in the hallway. She assumed the door had sealed behind her, but the latch caught on the rubber stopper. Her voice drifted through the gap. He can't know yet, she whispered. Not until the switch is final. A pause. No, Marcus. I said I would fix it. Another pause, longer this time. Then she said the sentence that turned my blood cold. You are the better candidate for this graft. Marcus Hale was not just any patient. He was Elena's ex-fiancé, a trauma surgeon at the same hospital, the man she had sworn was ancient history. 3 months earlier, he had returned from overseas with liver failure caused by a rare autoimmune condition. Elena told me she felt sorry for him. She said that was all. I believed her because belief was easier than admitting my wife watched another man with the tenderness she no longer gave me. I lay still until her footsteps disappeared. Then I pulled the folder from beneath the tray. The top page showed my donor's skin summary. No vascular anomaly. No contraindication. In bold type, the radiologist had written, anatomy favorable for right lobe donation. I read it 3 times. My hands began to shake, but not from weakness. Below the report was a printed note from the transplant scheduling system. My surgery status had been changed from confirmed to administrative hold at 4:42 p.m. The authorizing physician was Elena Vale. I should have confronted her immediately. That is what the old version of me would have done. The healthy version. The man who used to walk into boardrooms and turn arguments into contracts. But sickness had changed my timing. It had made me patient in a way business never could. When your body is failing, every movement costs something. You learn not to waste energy on the wrong battle. So I photographed every page. Then I returned the folder exactly where it had been. At 7 the next morning, Marcus Hale entered my room carrying coffee for my wife. He did not expect me to be awake. His expression broke for half a second, and that half second told me more than any confession. He knew. Elena followed behind him, her mouth tightening when she saw my eyes open. Marcus recovered first. How are you feeling, Dan? Nobody called me Dan except people who wanted to pretend we were closer than we were. Still dying, I said. But apparently that's become a scheduling issue. Elena gave me a warning look. Marcus laughed too loudly. He placed the coffee on the windowsill and began talking about how transplant medicine was unpredictable. He used the tone doctors use when they want patients to accept uncertainty without asking who created it. I watched him speak and wondered how long they had been planning this. Had Elena restarted the affair when he returned? Had she been waiting for my donor to clear testing? Had she looked at my compatible living donor and seen not my survival, but an opportunity to rescue the man she never stopped loving? Then Marcus made a mistake. He said, "Sometimes a paired solution saves more lives than a directed donation." The room went silent. Elena turned toward him. My donor was a directed donor. There had been no discussion of a paired exchange. Marcus could not have known that phrase mattered unless someone had told him about an internal proposal. I looked at Elena. What paired solution? She answered too quickly. He's speaking generally. Marcus took a step back. Of course. I smiled. Of course. They left within a minute. The instant the door closed, I made one call. Not to a lawyer. Not to the police. I called Priya Nand, the chief compliance officer of Astron Surgical Systems, the company I had founded 15 years earlier and quietly stepped away from after my diagnosis. Most people at St. Catherine's knew me only as Elena's sick husband, a former technology executive who had sold his stake and retired. That was the story I allowed them to believe. In reality, I still controlled 38% of Astron through a family trust and held veto rights over its institutional contracts. St. Catherine's largest upcoming contract was ours. A 12-year agreement for transplant robotics, operating room analytics, remote perfusion support, and maintenance. Worth $920 million. The hospital board had spent 2 years pursuing it. Elena had built her promotion campaign around securing it. Marcus had been promised leadership of the new transplant innovation unit if the contract closed. Priya answered on the second ring. Daniel, are you all right? No, I said. And I need you to treat what I'm about to tell you as a protected compliance report. Her voice changed instantly. Go ahead. I told her about the hold, the scan, the call, and Marcus's comment. I sent her the photographs. She did not interrupt once. When I finished, she said, "Do not confront them yet." That was my plan. You sound different. I was supposed to get a liver on Monday. My wife may be trying to give the arrangement to her ex. Priya inhaled slowly. Then we are not dealing with adultery. We are dealing with potential coercion, falsification, patient endangerment, and contract fraud. Exactly. What do you want me to do? I looked through the glass wall at Elena and Marcus speaking near the nurse's station. She touched his arm. He leaned close. They looked like two surgeons discussing a case. They looked professional, innocent, untouchable. Open everything, I said. Every email, every access log, every scheduling change connected to my donor, Marcus, Elena, and the Astron bid. And Priya? Yes. Do it quietly. By noon, my wife had postponed my surgery indefinitely. By sunset, I had decided to take her hospital apart without raising my voice. The next morning, Elena arrived with a smile she had practiced somewhere between the elevator and my door. She carried a paper bag from the bakery I liked and kissed my forehead as though the previous night had never happened. That was her greatest talent. She could place normality over a disaster like sterile gauze and expect everyone to admire how clean it looked. I brought the almond croissant, she said. My sodium restriction has disappeared. Her smile tightened. One bite won't hurt. One bite. One postponement. One stolen future. People rarely destroy you all at once. They ask you to surrender in portions small enough to seem unreasonable to resist. I tore off a piece and ate it. She relaxed. That was useful. Then she explained the new plan. My donor, Owen Mercer, would undergo additional review. In the meantime, the transplant program wanted to explore whether Owen might enter a paired donation chain. According to Elena, this could unlock another compatible donor for me later while allowing Owen's liver segment to help someone with greater urgency now. Someone like Marcus? I asked. Her hand stopped over the coffee cup. She looked at me for a full 3 seconds. Why would you say that? Because he mentioned paired donation. He was speaking academically. At my bedside? Surgeons discuss medicine, Daniel. Wives usually discuss major changes to their husband's surgeries before signing them. Her face hardened. I did what was medically responsible. There it was. Not denial. Just authority. I leaned back against the pillow and let fatigue soften my voice. I'm scared. It was not difficult to make the statement sound real. It was real. Fear and strategy can occupy the same body. Elena's expression shifted. She sat beside me and took my hand. I know. No, you don't. I know this feels cruel, but transplantation is not ownership. A donor is not property. A graft is not yours because you expected it. The words were technically correct, which made the lie more dangerous. Owen had autonomy. A hospital could not treat him like an object. But Elena was using ethical language to disguise unethical conduct. What does Owen want? I asked. He's considering the chain. Did he tell you that? The donor team is handling communication. That answer meant no. I closed my eyes. I need time. She squeezed my hand, mistaking silence for defeat. Before leaving, she placed a consent withdrawal form on the table. The document stated that I voluntarily agreed to suspend the directed donation while alternatives were evaluated. She had marked the signature line with a yellow tab. Legal needs this before the review meeting, she said. When is the meeting? Tomorrow morning. And if I don't sign? Her tone remained soft. Then you may appear unwilling to cooperate with the program. A threat delivered as guidance. I waited until she left, then photographed the form and sent it to Priya. Her reply came 10 minutes later. Do not sign. Also, we found something. She called through an encrypted line. Asteron's systems were integrated with St. Catherine's surgical planning platform during the contract trial, which meant access events were mirrored on our secure audit servers. Elena had opened Owen's donor record 17 times in 6 days, despite not being assigned to his care. Marcus had opened it 9 times. Both had accessed my recipient file after midnight from Elena's home network. More troubling, someone had created a draft paired donation proposal naming Marcus as the immediate recipient and assigning me a hypothetical future donor who had not completed evaluation. The draft claimed I had agreed in principle. I had not. Who created it? I asked. The account belongs to Dr. Simon Kessler, chair of transplant surgery, Priya said. But the document metadata shows it originated from Elena's workstation. Kessler was Elena's mentor and the man expected to become chief medical officer after the Asteron contract was signed. He had defended her through every controversy, including a mortality review 2 years earlier. If he was involved, this was not a private betrayal. It was institutional. Can they actually move Owen to Marcus? Not lawfully without Owen's independent consent and a new evaluation pathway. But they appear to be building paperwork that makes the switch look patient-directed. What about Owen? We need to know what he has been told. I already knew who could find out. Owen was not my brother or childhood friend. He was a man I had met 7 years earlier after his daughter nearly died during a rural surgery. Asteron's remote operating platform had connected the small hospital to a specialist team in Sydney. The system did not replace the surgeons, but it bought them time and guidance. His daughter survived. Owen later became one of our field engineers. When my diagnosis worsened, he volunteered for testing without telling me. He said he was not repaying a debt. He said he was choosing what kind of man he wanted to be. Elena hated that answer. She believed every act had a hidden transaction. I asked a nurse whether Owen had visited. She checked the log and said no. That was unusual. He had promised to come before the operation. I texted him, "Are you all right?" No response. I called, straight to voicemail. That afternoon, I discharged myself against Elena's advice. She discovered me dressing and blocked the doorway. You are encephalopathic, coagulopathic, and barely stable. You cannot walk out. I can walk. Watch. Do not turn this into a performance. I buttoned my shirt slowly. I'm going home. You need monitoring. What I need is an independent transplant center. For the first time, panic flashed across her face. Transferring now could delay you for months. Staying could delay me until Marcus is healthy. She closed the door behind her. You're imagining things because you're frightened. Then show me Owen's scan. She said nothing. Show me the vascular anomaly. Patient files are confidential. You quoted it to me. I summarized the team discussion. Named the radiologist. Her jaw tightened. I will not participate in this paranoia. She stepped aside, but her voice followed me into the hallway. If you leave, I cannot protect your place in the program. I turned around. Nurses, patients, and 2 residents were watching us. You're not protecting my place, I said. You're shopping it. The corridor went silent. Elena's face did not move, but I saw the fury in her eyes. I had broken our unspoken rule, never embarrass her in public. She could tolerate cruelty, dishonesty, even risk. She could not tolerate losing control of the room. I walked away before my legs betrayed me. Priya had arranged a car and a private medical escort. We drove not to my house, but to a serviced apartment owned by Asteron. Our security chief met us downstairs. I hated needing the wheelchair he had brought, but I used it. Revenge is easier when you stop confusing dignity with appearances. Inside the apartment, Priya had converted the dining area into a temporary command center. 2 laptops displayed timelines, file logs, and contract drafts. My attorney, Julian Cross, sat near the window with a stack of documents. Beside him was Dr. Miriam Sato, former director of transplant ethics at St. Catherine's. She had resigned the previous year after accusing Kessler of pressuring the committee to approve high-profile cases. Miriam studied my eyes, hands, and abdomen before she greeted me. You need a hospital. I just left one. You left a building with beds. That is not the same thing as leaving danger. She examined my latest labs, then made 3 calls. Within an hour, she secured an urgent evaluation at Northbridge University Hospital, a competing transplant center. Their team would admit me under confidentiality that evening. Before I left, Priya turned 1 laptop toward me. On the screen was an email from Elena to Kessler sent 6 weeks earlier. Subject, Strategic Alignment, Hale Case and Asteron signing. The message proposed that Marcus's successful high-complexity transplant could be featured during the Asteron contract announcement. Elena argued that restoring a celebrated trauma surgeon to practice would create better publicity than operating on a non-clinical spouse with limited public value. I read that phrase twice. Limited public value. 15 years of building the technology they wanted. $920 million under negotiation. Hundreds of jobs. Thousands of procedures. To my wife, I was still just the sick man in the bed. Then Priya scrolled lower. Kessler had replied, "Can your husband be persuaded to accept the later match?" Elena's answer contained only 5 words. "He will do what I say." Northbridge admitted me under the name Daniel Mercer, using my middle name as a temporary privacy measure. It would not withstand a court order, but it kept casual searches from revealing where I had gone. The transplant team repeated my imaging and labs, reviewed Owen's reports, and confirmed what I already knew. The operation had been medically feasible. My condition had worsened during the delay, but I remained eligible for living donor transplantation if Owen still consented. That last part mattered most. Nobody could find him. By midnight, his phone was off, his apartment was empty, and he had not reported to work. Asteron Security traced his company vehicle to a rehabilitation facility owned by a subsidiary connected to St. Catherine's. The place advertised private recovery for physicians and executives. Owen was neither. Julian obtained an emergency welfare order before dawn. 2 officers accompanied him to the facility. They found Owen in a locked room under observation, sedated with medication he had not previously taken. The admission paperwork described him as emotionally unstable and at risk of impulsive self-harm after withdrawing from organ donation. The referring physician was Marcus Hale. Owen had never withdrawn. He had refused the switch. When he woke at Northbridge 6 hours later, his first question was whether my surgery had happened. His second was why Elena had told him I no longer wanted his donation. I sat beside his bed, too angry to speak. Owen filled the silence. 3 days earlier, Elena and a donor coordinator had asked him to attend what they called a routine counseling session. Once there, they told him my health had deteriorated beyond the point where transplantation would be beneficial. They said Marcus was a perfect alternative recipient and that redirecting the donation would honor Owen's original intention to save a life. Owen demanded to speak with me. They refused. He tried to leave, Marcus arrived and accused him of becoming agitated. Owen admitted he shouted. He denied threatening anyone. Security restrained him after Marcus signed an emergency mental health referral. At the facility, staff took his phone and told him outside contact would interfere with his assessment. They wanted me to sign a new donor consent form, Owen said. His voice trembled, not from fear, but rage. Every few hours, someone brought it back. Did you sign anything? Julian asked. Only a refusal. Do you remember who witnessed it? A nurse named Talia Reed. She looked uncomfortable. She slipped me this. From the pocket of his borrowed robe, Owen removed a folded medication wrapper. Inside it was a tiny piece of paper with a phone number and 4 words. They are altering the notes. Priya called the number. Talia answered. By noon, we had a whistleblower. Talia had copied Owen's original intake assessment before Marcus revised it. The first version described him as alert, oriented, and appropriately angry about being detained. The revised version added hallucinations, suicidal statements, and confusion. Electronic audit logs showed Marcus entering those additions remotely 2 hours after the examination. Talia also had photographs of a consent form bearing a signature that looked like Owen's, but was not. The forged form approved transfer of his donor evaluation into a paired chain benefiting Marcus. That document changed everything. Until then, Elena could claim she had pushed an aggressive ethical proposal and mishandled a conflict of interest. The forgery, detention, and altered psychiatric record transformed the case into something prosecutors would understand immediately. Julian wanted to seek injunctions, notify regulators, and release the evidence to law enforcement that afternoon. Priya agreed with the reporting, but she urged us not to reveal our full hand to St. Catherine's yet. The Asteron contract signing was scheduled for Friday, 48 hours away. Hospital executives, donors, journalists, and state health officials would attend. Elena and Marcus expected to announce the new innovation unit on stage. I understood Priya's idea before she said it. You want them gathered in one room, I said. I want the people who enabled this unable to claim they were uninformed, she replied. Miriam frowned. A public reveal cannot interfere with patient safety or the criminal process. It won't, Julian said. We report now under seal, preserve the evidence, and allow authorities to act when appropriate. The event is where Daniel exercises contractual rights. I looked at Owen. And the surgery? Northbridge's chief transplant surgeon had already reviewed his condition. Because his evaluation was complete and the medical records were available, the team could repeat only the essential independent testing. If both of us remained stable, they could operate Saturday morning. Owen did not hesitate. I'm still doing it. You were drugged and locked up because of me. No, because of them. You don't owe me this. I know. He leaned forward. Stop taking away my choice just because they tried to. That silenced me. For 2 years, everyone had spoken about my body as if it were a failing asset. Doctors discussed scores. Administrators discussed priority. Elena discussed my public value. I had begun doing the same thing to Owen, reducing his decision to a burden I needed to release him from. He was right. Respecting autonomy meant accepting an answer even when guilt made it uncomfortable. I nodded. Saturday, he said. The next step was bait. I called Elena from my Northbridge room. She answered immediately. Where are you? Safe. You need to return to St. Catherine's. I've been thinking about the paired exchange. Silence. Then her voice softened. All right. I don't want to be selfish. You aren't selfish. The lie came so smoothly that I almost admired it. I'll sign the suspension form, I said. But I need something from you. What? I want reassurance that I'll receive the next compatible donor. In writing. Signed by Kessler. She exhaled. That can be arranged. And I want to attend the contract ceremony Friday. Daniel, you're too unwell. People already know I'm your husband. If I disappear before the announcement, they'll talk. I can sit in the front row and smile. She considered it. I could hear ambition calculating against risk. Finally, she said, fine. I'll send a car. No, Priya will bring me. Another silence. You've spoken to Asteron? I used to run the company. I still know people. About what? My illness. Nothing else. Her breathing eased. Of course. Before ending the call, I asked whether she loved Marcus. The question surprised both of us. Why are you doing this now, she asked. Because I may not have many chances left. She waited so long that the heart monitor filled the space between us. Then she said, what I feel for him is complicated. What do you feel for me? You're my husband. Not love. A title. I thanked her for answering. After the call, I stared at the dark phone screen until Miriam pulled a chair beside me. You expected a confession? She asked. No. Then why ask? I wanted to know whether there was any part of this marriage worth grieving. And I looked toward the window. Rain had begun striking the glass in sharp, scattered bursts. I think I finished grieving before she answered. Elena sent the agreement that evening. Kessler had signed a letter promising that I would receive priority consideration for a future compatible living donor. The phrase had no enforceable clinical meaning. It was designed to comfort a fool. Attached to the letter was the suspension form. I signed nothing. Instead, Julian created a visually identical copy containing a unique digital tracking mark. We sent it back with the signature line blank, but told Elena the executed version would be delivered at the ceremony. Within 20 minutes, our tracking system recorded the file being opened on Elena's computer, then exported into editing software. 30 minutes later, she emailed me a copy bearing my forged signature. She wrote, "Thank you for trusting me." I forwarded it to the investigators. Then I slept better than I had in months. Friday arrived dressed like a celebration. St. Catherine's covered its central atrium in silver banners bearing the Asteron logo. A temporary stage stood beneath the glass ceiling, flanked by screens displaying surgical robots, glowing liver models, and smiling patients. Champagne waited on trays even though the contract had not been signed. The hospital had already decided the future belonged to them. Priya pushed my wheelchair through the main entrance at 6:30. I wore a charcoal suit that hung loosely from my shoulders. My skin was visibly jaundiced, and I made no attempt to hide it. Cameras turned toward us. Elena hurried across the atrium before reporters could approach. "What are you doing in a wheelchair?" she whispered. "Saving energy." "You look terrible." "I feel worse." Her eyes moved to Priya. "Where is the document?" Priya held up a slim black folder. "All necessary documents are here." Elena reached for it. Priya did not release it. For one brief second, they stood smiling at each other while both gripped the same folder. Then Priya said, "After the presentation." Elena let go. Marcus appeared moments later in a tuxedo, healthy enough to host a gala despite claiming urgent need for Owen's graft. Liver disease can fluctuate, and appearances are not a clinical score, but his confidence revealed something important. He believed the problem had already been solved. He crouched beside my chair and placed a hand on my shoulder for the cameras. "Good to see you supporting the program," he said. I looked at his hand until he removed it. "Enjoy the evening," I replied. "It was designed for you." At 7, Kessler took the stage. He praised innovation, courage, and trust. The word trust appeared so often it became almost comic. He introduced Elena as the visionary who had united St. Catherine's clinical excellence with Asteron's technology. She walked into the light to a standing ovation. My wife spoke beautifully. She always did. She described surgeons as custodians of hope, hospitals as guardians of fairness, and transplantation as a sacred promise that no private interest could corrupt. Behind her, a video showed her comforting families and guiding robotic procedures. I watched the audience lean toward her. They wanted to believe excellence and goodness were the same thing. Then she introduced Marcus. He joined her on stage as the proposed director of the Hale Vale Center for Transplant Innovation. That name had never appeared in the contract drafts. Apparently, they had planned a monument to themselves before securing the money to build it. Marcus told the audience he had recently become a liver transplant candidate. He spoke about vulnerability, second chances, and the generosity of living donors. He did not mention Owen. He did not mention me. He ended by saying, "No patient should lose hope because of status, wealth, or influence." That was my cue. Priya rolled me toward the stage. Elena saw us moving and faltered for the first time. It was only one missed breath, but the microphones caught it. Kessler stepped forward. "And now, we welcome Daniel Vale, whose personal courage has inspired." "My name is Daniel Rowan," I said. The room shifted. I had taken Elena's surname publicly after our marriage because she said it would simplify hospital events. My legal name had never changed. Hearing me reclaim it told her what the audience did not yet understand. Priya helped me stand at the lectern. I gripped its edges until the dizziness passed. I was asked here to witness the signing of a $920 million contract. I began. Most of you know me as Dr. Vale's husband. Some know I am waiting for a liver transplant. Very few know I founded Asteron Surgical Systems. Whispers moved through the atrium. The screens behind me changed. Priya had taken control of the presentation feed. Asteron's corporate history appeared, including a photograph of me 15 years younger beside the first remote perfusion prototype. I stepped away from daily leadership after becoming ill. I continued. I did not surrender my controlling rights. Under Asteron's governance agreement, no institutional contract of this scale can proceed without approval from my trust and the compliance committee. Elena approached the microphone. Daniel is unwell. This is not the appropriate venue. I turned toward her. You were willing to announce my medical decisions here. The venue became appropriate when you built the ceremony around them. Priya displayed Owen's original scan report, then my scheduling record, then the unauthorized paired donation draft. I explained each document carefully. No accusations beyond what the records proved. No dramatic shouting. The facts were dramatic enough. Elena tried to interrupt again. These are confidential medical documents. They are mine, I said. Owen consented to the disclosure of his relevant records to investigators and Asteron compliance. Marcus stepped toward the edge of the stage. Where is Owen? The question exposed him more effectively than anything I could have said. I looked directly at him. Safe. His face emptied. The screens changed to the original psychiatric assessment and the altered version. Audit timestamps appeared beside the additions. Talia's signed statement followed, with protected details redacted. Murmurs became voices. Board members began turning toward Kessler. A state health official stood and moved closer to the stage. I continued. Owen refused to redirect his donation. He was detained under a referral signed by Dr. Hale. His notes were later altered. A consent form was created with a signature he denies making. That is a lie, Marcus snapped. The doors at the rear of the atrium opened. 2 investigators from the healthcare fraud unit entered with hospital security and uniformed officers. They did not rush the stage. They did not need to. Everyone could see them. Marcus stepped back. Elena did not. She stared at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not guilt. Not fear. Betrayal. In her mind, evidence was not the betrayal. Exposing it was. Then Priya displayed the suspension form Elena had emailed me. My forged signature filled the screen. Beside it appeared the file history showing the blank tracked version opened and edited on her workstation. Kessler reached for the microphone. The board had no knowledge of any forged document. Priya answered from below the stage. Then the board will welcome an independent investigation. He looked toward the hospital chairwoman for help. She removed the contract pen from the signing table and placed it back in its case. I opened the black folder. Inside were 2 documents. The first was Asteron's formal notice terminating negotiations with St. Catherine's for cause. The second awarded preferred provider status to Northbridge University Hospital, contingent on final regulatory approval and independent oversight. The contract value was smaller because Northbridge had refused exclusivity, but its protections were stronger. External transplant audits, whistleblower safeguards, conflict of interest review, and patient access guarantees. Elena told her colleagues I had limited public value, I said. Perhaps she was right. A patient should not need public value to receive honest care. That is why Asteron will not place its technology in a program that treats influence as an eligibility score. I signed the termination notice. No applause followed. I was grateful. Applause would have turned the moment into entertainment. This was not revenge theater. Owen had been restrained. My operation had been delayed. Other patients might have been manipulated without the resources to uncover it. Silence was the only respectful response. The investigators approached Marcus first. One asked him to surrender his hospital badge and phone under the terms of a preservation order. He refused until the chairwoman instructed security to cooperate. Kessler was escorted to a private office for questioning. Elena remained at the lectern. When the room began emptying, she leaned close to me. You destroyed everything. No, I said. I stopped paying for it. You think Northbridge is clean? Every institution makes compromises. Then they can make them without my contract. Her eyes shone, but she would not cry in public. Marcus would have died. So might I. You had time. You falsified that conclusion. He could return to surgery. He could save hundreds of people. And that made his life worth more. She looked away. At last, the real belief stood exposed. Elena had not acted in a moment of passion. She had built a moral equation in which Marcus's career outweighed my existence. Once she accepted that equation, every lie became a necessary adjustment. I lowered my voice. Did you ever intend to find me another donor? She said nothing. That silence answered more than cruelty could. Priya brought the wheelchair. As she helped me sit, Elena touched my sleeve. Daniel, wait. I looked at her hand. She withdrew it. For years, I had imagined that discovering an affair would be the worst possible end to our marriage. I had been wrong. Desire is human. Weakness is human. Even betrayal can be painfully human. But Elena had reviewed my declining liver function, signed my hold, watched me celebrate Monday, and decided I was an acceptable loss. There was nothing left to discuss. I returned to Northbridge before midnight. My labs had worsened again, and the anesthesiologist warned that Saturday's operation carried greater risk because of the delay. Owen was already in the donor wing. He sent me a message containing only 3 words, "Finish this alive." At 6 the next morning, they rolled me toward the operating theater. The corridor lights passed overhead one by one. I thought about contracts, evidence, and Elena's face when the screen changed. Then those thoughts fell away. None of them could help me now. A transplant is not victory. It is an exchange of risk made possible by another person's deliberate courage. Before anesthesia, the surgeon asked me to confirm my name. Daniel Rowan, I said. And the procedure? Living donor liver transplant. And your donor? Owen Mercer. Voluntarily. The surgeon understood why I added the word. She nodded. The mask lowered. For the first time in months, I stopped planning what came next. I woke 2 days later to pain, machinery, and Priya asleep in a chair with a legal pad on her lap. For several seconds, I could not remember whether the operation had happened. Then I saw the fresh dressing beneath my gown and heard the nurse say my new liver was functioning. Owen was stable. That mattered more than every other update. The investigation moved quickly because the evidence had already been preserved. Marcus was suspended, then charged with offenses related to falsifying records, unlawful detention, and conspiracy. Kessler resigned before the board could remove him. Regulators placed St. Catherine's transplant program under external supervision and reopened earlier complaints. Talia received whistleblower protection. Several staff members came forward after realizing silence would no longer protect the powerful people above them. Elena's surgical privileges were suspended immediately. 3 weeks later, the medical board imposed an interim prohibition while criminal and professional proceedings continued. She was not led away from the gala in handcuffs, and I was glad. Real accountability is slower and less cinematic. It is interviews, hearings, records, and doors that stop opening when your title no longer frightens anyone. She visited me once during recovery. Northbridge required my permission before allowing her upstairs. I almost refused, but there was one question I wanted answered. Elena entered without makeup, jewelry, or the white coat that had always seemed fused to her identity. She looked smaller, though perhaps I had simply stopped seeing her through the magnifying glass of marriage. She sat beside the window. My lawyer told me not to come. Then this must be important. I need you to say the affair did not influence the medical decision. I laughed, and the incision punished me for it. She flinched. Marcus and I were not together when this began. Were you together at the end? Her eyes dropped. That is not why I asked you here, I said. I want to know when you decided I was expendable. You weren't expendable. You postponed my surgery, forged my consent, and promised me a donor who did not exist. I believed we could save both of you. No, you believed Marcus should go first. She pressed her lips together. He had a narrower window. The independent review disagrees. I had clinical reasons. You had a preferred outcome. The room fell quiet. Finally, she said, when you became ill, you disappeared. You stopped being the man I married. There it was, the final transfer of blame. I became a patient, I said. You became dangerous. She stood. You took the contract to punish me. I took it because your hospital turned patient care into a private ranking system. You made sure I lost everything. No, I made sure you could not use what I built to reward what you did. She stared at me, waiting for mercy to appear in the space where love had once been. I felt sadness, but sadness is not permission. Our marriage is over, I said. Julian will handle the rest. She left without saying goodbye. 6 months later, I walked into Northbridge without a wheelchair. I was thinner, scarred, and still rebuilding strength, but my eyes were clear. Owen met me in the atrium with his daughter. He complained that I had become annoyingly sentimental since surgery, then hugged me hard enough to prove he was recovering well. Asteron's Northbridge partnership launched that afternoon. There were no champagne towers and no center named after executives. The first funding announcement created an independent donor advocacy office separated from transplant leadership. The second established legal support for patients who questioned allocation decisions. The third protected staff who reported altered records. When I took the stage, I did not tell the audience I had defeated my wife. That was never the real ending. I told them systems fail when trust is treated as a substitute for verification. I told them expertise without accountability becomes entitlement. And I told them every patient, famous or forgotten, must be worth the same honesty. Afterward, a reporter asked whether taking the contract had been revenge. I looked across the atrium at Owen laughing with his daughter. Revenge would have been watching their hospital collapse, I said. I chose something harder. I built the contract they could never control. That evening, I returned to my apartment and opened the old calendar on my phone. The original surgery date was still marked in blue. Monday, new liver, new start. For a moment, I considered deleting it. Instead, I changed the note. Monday, the day I learned who wanted me alive. Then I closed the calendar, turned off the light, and slept without wondering whether morning would come. A year later, St. Catherine's lost its appeal to restore the contract. The board issued a public apology to Owen and me, although neither of us attended. Marcus surrendered his license while the case proceeded. Elena contested every allegation until Talia's preserved records and the forged files made denial impossible. I never celebrated the headlines. They were evidence that the truth had finally become expensive enough to matter. My divorce was finalized on a quiet Tuesday. Elena kept the house. I kept the shares she had once dismissed as sentimental leftovers from a company she believed I no longer controlled. When the solicitor asked whether I wanted a statement entered into the record, I declined. The most important statement had already been signed beneath the hospital lights. I spent that evening walking along the river with Owen. We moved slowly because both of us still tired more easily than we admitted. He asked whether I regretted marrying her. I thought about the years before the betrayal, the warnings I ignored, and the man illness forced me to become. No, I said. Regret would mean she gets to own everything that came before. Owen nodded. And what does she own now? Her choices. That was enough. The scar across my abdomen never faded completely. I did not want it to. It reminded me that survival was not something Elena granted, Marcus deserved, or a committee could trade for prestige. It was a gift freely offered by one man, protected by people willing to speak, and defended the moment I stopped asking permission to live. From then on, every Asteron contract carried the same rule. No surgeon, executive, donor, or spouse would ever stand above a patient's documented consent again, anywhere.